Welcome to NeedleXChange, the stories behind the stitches. My name's Jamie Chalmers, aka Mr. X Stitch, and in this episode I am continuing my conversation with Sean Alistair, an artist whose practice turns punk energy, personal upheaval and textile process into work that is beautiful, furious and emotionally charged. After our first conversation, I realised that I needed to ask Sean more directly about his work, so we spoke again. In this final part of our conversation, we dig into Sean's artistic practice, how he uses music as a way of naming and feeling his work. We talk anti-war imagery, anger as creative fuel, why pretty can be the wrong read, how feedback can either help or hinder an artist, and how Sean is rebuilding a portfolio and a creative direction after a huge life shift. If you want to listen to another artist whose creativity has evolved in response to real life events, check out episodes 31 and 32 with the magnificent Katie Toom, who created an entire pantheon as part of her process. I'll be back next week with someone else from the corners of the stitching world, and if you have time to leave a review on your favourite podcasting platform, well, I'd be very grateful. But until now, or until next week even, enjoy the show. Oh, it's because I interviewed this lady, Helen Adams, who's called the Textile Curator, and she'll be coming out soon. And she was like, she kind of almost wanted me to do the podcast again. She was like, she'd spoken to a friend who'd got a podcast about property, and it was very scripted, like they had the same questions and this and that and the other. And I was just like, I don't think that's how I do it. Like, I think I'm just a very discursive kind of podcaster. I just want to have a chat with people. And as long as I hit the touch points, which we failed to do, but as long as I do that, then I feel like it's a success. Whereas if I was just like, tell me about Sean as a child. Next question. Who were your early artistic influences? I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I watch a lot of podcasts while I work, and I like the ones that are just conversation. And yes, there's points you want to talk about, but having that good back and forth is enjoyable. When it's too scripted or you just hit the points, I found this a little almost impersonal and a little boring.
It's like chat shows when you know someone's got a book to sell. That sort of thing, isn't it? What podcast do you like listening to / watching?
I watch A Little Bit Fruity. It's like a political podcast, like a queer perspective, but it's a lot of pop culture type things like that. I mean, and also video essays. Like I really like ContraPoints. I mean, you have to wait kind of a year between, and they're very, very long, but also pop culture ones or deep dives. Like my corner, I really shouldn't be participating in the corner of the internet that I am, because it's very Gen Z, and I'm definitely not a Gen Z, and I know too much that I should. I don't know. I feel like the creepy neighbor looking through the blinds at like the youth, because I'm like, my internet, the corner I am in, other millennials are not. Like a lot of our friends, I'm older than them, but I feel like my perspective or what I know is too young, and so I'm like, I need to dial it back or something.
Yeah, you've just been down with the kids, and they're like, I'm not sure you're allowed to be down with the
I
kids
know,
anymore.
I really shouldn't. I really shouldn't. But
I sort of vacillate sometimes. There's a podcast I'm enjoying at the moment. It's called Modern Wisdom, which is by a guy called Chris Wilkinson. He just interviews interesting people, and if you choose the right people, then you do get some good conversations. Because he started out, he was a bit like, not complete manosphere, but in that kind of arena. But lately he's been going on quite a lot of a sort of emotional journey and talking to people who are interested in men being emotionally aware and all that kind of stuff. So that's quite satisfying, because that resonates quite well. And then, have you ever heard of the Blind Boy podcast?
No.
So he's this guy from, oh, bollocks. Where's he from? I knew that would go out. I've got this thing now. I think it's called the Manopause, which is where I can't remember nouns, like because of my age or something. Oh, he's from Limerick. There we go. So he's Irish. He's very neurodiverse, and he does these deep dives on things, and sometimes will tie together interesting stories. That there's something to do with starling migration, but actually it was as much to do with towns growing in places where starlings used to migrate. This particular part of his town as well being completely covered in starling shit for certain times of the year, because they all roost there. And the reason they roost there is that it used to be a forest and all of this sort of stuff. But sometimes he'll tie it in with the folklore of the land. But he's like really ASMR. like really. But then he has this little music, like this little piano music in the background that's just this little loop that is so hypnotic. And sometimes at the end of his show, he lets that loop play on for like 5 minutes and you won't really have realised he stopped talking because you're just like hypnotised. It's like, it's soporific and really interesting, like really nicely produced. So I admire that sometimes. And I used to listen to one, we've got one over here called The Rest is Politics, which is one of the country's biggest ones, and it's all about politics. But now I find that would just annoy me. It just used to annoy me twice a week, and so I made the decision that I didn't need to be annoyed twice a week by that. So I think that's part of the trick, really, isn't it? It's crazy days, but then I've just come to the conclusion, like, what is going on in the world is crazy, but I'm in a town called Crewe, and I can make a difference here. And so I think I'm just going to focus on that, because I can't do anything about Iran. So I'm just like, just going to do what I can do.
Yeah, with politics and with the environment, as I always say, like, I have a bit of a, like, I like to explore nihilism in a way where, like, you realize that nothing matters. And, it was at the time when, we started thinking about the environment and, don't use straws and don't use plastic bags and blah, 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 blah. And I said, you know what, my one action doesn't matter. I'm just one person. However, like, I'm a grain of sand. However, if like a million billion people, they also do the same thing, then we collectively can make a difference. So I don't put a lot of pressure on myself if it's not to be perfect. If it's not perfect, that's okay. But I do believe collectively that you can make a difference. And I think, especially at like a local level or a small action or doing something in the immediate can actually have a huge impact. Even just kindness can have a huge impact on people's lives. And, I think about that all the time where, like, especially online, with especially like, say, who I follow, whatever, they're very politically minded or they're activists are out there. And I never post things like that. I don't like performative activism, but I'm really passionate about equal rights and human rights. And, I'll look at where my money goes and where I shop and how I spend and how I eat and how I exist and all these things. But I do it for me. And I don't like, if I post anything, it's just, I am in an echo chamber, but I do believe that it does make a difference. I do believe that, not eating here or not eating there or not buying from here or there, it does make a difference, especially if many people do it together. So it's kind of like realizing that I don't matter, but I can make a difference. It's a little bit of a cynical take, but I think it's also optimistic because, like I said, if enough people do something, it actually does make a difference.
Yeah. It's like rational optimism, isn't it? It's kind of going, I can't make a difference, but I can tread lightly anyway, or try and. That's what I mean. And it's like, we can't all be like box breathing vegans 24/7 doing yoga or whatever. Like, we can just do the best that we can do. I'm trying to develop a way here. Like, there's this weird culture where I live of people who will sometimes just sit in their car with the engines running, like they're waiting for someone. Or I've even seen, and I had this happen once. So a guy did the school run at my daughter's school, and he left his van running, but got out of it and went and got his daughter. And I walked past, and I just thought, fuck it. And I just opened the car door and just turned his car off and then closed the car door again. So when he came back, the car door was turned off because I was like, because I can't fathom, unless it's freezing, which it never is, I can't fathom why you need to sit for more than 30 seconds in your car with the engine running when you're waiting for someone. But I've yet to work out the thing, like the right bit where I can say to someone, oh, hi, can you just turn your car off for a minute? And then like go thanks and just walk off, or try and explain to them, because they're wasting money and slightly harming the planet, and it's just fucking stupid. But I haven't found like the graceful way of doing that. Whereas like I kind of want to do a bit like, it's a bit loud. Can you just turn the music down? Could you just turn your car off for a minute? Because I just want to ask you something. And then I'll go like, don't you feel better? Because you just saved yourself some money. And then wander off or something. You know what I mean?
So much mindlessness. Like I saw this interesting thing. So John and I, we eat primarily vegetarian. Like, I'll consider ourselves vegetarian, but if we're craving meat, we'll eat it. And I saw this interesting, it was actually an opinion of a drag queen, so it's kind of blunt, but they said, you can be a vegetarian, and if someone says, oh, I can't go vegan because I need bacon, then be a vegan who eats bacon. It's like, it doesn't mean if you have meat one time doesn't mean you're not a vegetarian. And I think if I'm craving meat, then I'll eat meat, but like 99% of the time I don't. And so, or like if someone's cooking it, we'll just be easy and we'll eat it. My stomach will hate me for it, but like it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to be like so strict with what you're doing. I think we need to exist in a gray zone.
I do think that's a really good phrase, isn't it? You can be vegan, eat bacon, and still be a vegan. You just weren't vegan for that 5 minutes there or whatever. But we live in that world, don't we, where your opinion has to match the exact template given, doesn't it? You know?
I'm gay. If I kiss a girl, I'm still gay. You know, it's like
yeah, right, exactly that. Yeah.
It's the same thing, and like I said, it doesn't really matter. But you know, we seldom ever make it. We seldom ever eat it, and I do it. Like I'm pro hunting, I'm pro fur, I'm pro meat, but I don't like the industrialized, like in the industrial meat or animal.
Yeah. The 35-week-old chicken that gets slaughtered or whatever, isn't it? Yeah.
Pro. So if we do eat it, it's going to be something that's from like a local butcher or a local farmer. So it's more like it's that. So it's not. And again, I'm pro hunting, but hunting for eating, and you use all the bits and bobs. You know, it's like I'm more pro fur than I am pro fake fur, because fake fur is destroying our planet. Or
yeah, weirdly, isn't it? Yeah.
It's biodegradable, renewable. You know, it's like you just do it in a humane way, do it in a responsible way. Don't overdo it. I think there's a balance about it. You know.
But same with like kind of like vegan food, isn't it? There's never been a better time to be a vegan unless UPF, ultra processed food, bothers you. In which case, we're back to a square one again, aren't we? Kind of. I was just thinking,
like I won't eat a veggie burger because I'm like, if I want a burger, I'll eat a normal burger. It's that like fake chicken, fake meat. I'm fine with tofu, but I'm like, just eat it. Just eat the chicken. You know, unless your stomach can't. Yeah.
Don't pretend. I was just thinking of, I'm heterosexual, but if I find myself with a penis in my mouth, I guess I'm confused. I don't know. I was just like, okay. That was good. That had nothing to do with your artwork, but I thought that was a very healthy conversation anyway. So that's good. Let's talk about your artwork for a minute. So I wanted to ask you actually, because I was having a look. I was just thinking about the titles of your work actually. And particularly there's a series like Neon Blonde and the Blood Brothers and stuff like that. And I mean, are they musical references as much as anything?
They're the exact songs. So they are for this series of work. So I've always referenced music in my work and in my title. So I've been a person since I was probably 15. I got my first iPod. I perpetually have my headphones in and I'm always listening to music. It's very important to my day-to-day in my life. And so I've used song titles before or been inspired by them, but I wanted to do kind of like shove it down your throat of the exact feeling. So when you listen to the song, it's the feeling of the work. And the feeling has nothing to do with what the work is about, because that whole series is actually inspired by this idea of how we teach and talk about war to our children. And because I'm adamantly anti-war, anti-fighting, I'm a pacifist. And my question is, like, if we never talk or taught our children about war, would they know what it is? Like, would they use it as a solution? And so I wanted to do all these real military objects and treat them like really flat and fun and colorful and different as though they were toys. And so it's all about like treating them almost like a children's advertisement. But the feeling about it is angry. It's disgust. And so, you know, even with like, and I'm even more aware of it now that I have a kid, is that a lot of kids' media is like fighting. It's good versus bad. There's no nuance. It's like, you're the good guy, you're the bad guy. It's fighting, it's battling, it's violence. And like I said, I'm a very non-violent person. And so it's just this thing that I was thinking about. So when I was naming these works, I was like, I want it to be the feeling. And they're all from music that was from kind of my adolescence that I listened to, that I went to the concerts. And so you can listen to the song and kind of get the feeling of it.
Yeah, it was making me think a bit of like synesthesia in some ways, isn't it?
Yep.
Is that kind of where you're at?
Kind of. Actually, I have a friend who does work like that. So she listens to song and does these like really interesting kind of graphic pieces about that. But yeah, it's like taking some time away from work when I was in Canada to, you know, focusing on having a kid and taking time and not working. It kind of really helped me put things in perspective about my process, how I want to go forward with my art and what I want to present. Being kind of quiet and not taking any advice from people helped me kind of realize where I want to go and showcase this world that I'm in and that I have. I think before I was very, you know, it's just one part of it, but since I started working, especially like the last 10 years that I've been doing embroidery, but even before that, my work, it encompasses sculpture and photography and music and film and embroidery and mixed media and so many other attributes that now, like I relaunched my website to a.com. It's showing all those elements and how they all intertwine together. So the music part of it is like, if you're in a space, this is how I want you to feel. Because I really detest when someone looks at my work and go, "Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, it's so cute." And I'm like, "No, it's actually." I had a colleague, an artist friend, and she said, "Your work looks quite angry." And I'm like, "Thank you, thank you." Finally, someone gets that there's aggression behind it. I don't like to make work about happy feelings. I'm trying to process my anger and my frustration through my work, and it may be sparkly, but there's anxiety and anger and frustration behind it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wrote down something you just said a minute ago about when he stops taking advice from people, because that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes sometimes you need a second opinion, but I guess what you're saying is, or what I'm hearing is, the complexity of your work means that rarely do you get the right opinion. So maybe it's better to just go with your gut or something.
Yeah, I kind of realized that I'm so easily influenced by people, and that I'm fine with feedback, that I have a really thick skin, especially spending 20 years in fashion and in merchandising and styling. Like, that's all you're getting is feedback. So it has nothing to do with like an ego thing. It's about trying to protect my vision and to not be so easily influenced. So for me, I don't want, like, sometimes it's more so I talk to my husband about things because I need a second opinion, because I know what I like. There's something I know what the answer is, but I kind of need him to push me to that side. But I realize that I really don't like the feedback. Like, not saying I wouldn't take it. I definitely, if I respect you or I think you understand what I'm doing, then I think it has an impact on me. But I also don't like to be complimented. That makes me very uncomfortable when someone goes on and sings my praises about like how talented or how beautiful. I don't want to hear that. It's like it's a thing that makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm like, if you want to talk like, let's talk about, the design, the shape, the color, the texture, the proportion, the finishing, like that can help me improve, not just like, blow smoke on my ass. And then, or someone's like, "Oh, you should do it more white or more blue," or like, to me, that doesn't actually help me. So I try to keep it really insular and kind of be more raw with what I'm doing. And, within that, I, make a lot of crap, and I've made a lot of really terrible paintings, but it helps me kind of refine the actual voice.
Yeah. So I suppose, you want feedback that helps, like you say, push you towards the vision you're making, not for people to, like you say, just abstract compliments. I've now had to scribble out a third of all my notes where I was going to say nice things about your work, but reject that idea. No, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because I think sometimes that harsh feedback is what people need, but it takes quite a lot of resolve to accept like criticism, because at first, when you first put yourself out there, you're worried that's all you're going to get. So it's interesting. I guess you must have almost gone like full circle on that or something.
I mean, I'm really violent towards myself and towards my work, and I don't really feel necessarily attached to it, So I'm really fine with someone telling me that it's crap, but I want to know why. And it better be beyond than it's just your opinion. Your opinion means nothing to me. But if you talk about, well, the quality here, the shape here, the proportion here, it does not work, that I can do something with. And that I'm open to hear. But just like hearing someone's opinion, I get that all the time. And I like it. I like when someone's like, "Oh, I hate it," or this, like, it's stirring up a feeling. But just that kind of loose opinion where everyone tells me, like, it's quite interesting, because with what I do, I dabble in kind of everything with fiber art, that the moment, say, like, I post something about cross stitch or I post something about quilting or whatnot, I always have someone go, "Oh, I know this person, you should be friends." They also do that, and it happens every time. And which I like, because I like to connect with as many people as possible, especially in like a fiber art world. And I had this a lot at first. They said, "Oh, you should do clothing, you should do fashion, you should be a fashion designer." But I'm like, that's not really the point of what I'm doing. But that, it's that those types of comments, I'm like, those don't really help me. You're not really seeing What?
Does it feel a bit like the story of the blind people and the elephant, where they're just like, you know, the one where there's like, I'm going to get this wrong, but there's a load of blind people and they're stood in front of an elephant, and one of them touches the elephant's leg and goes, "This feels like a tree," and then another one touches their ear and goes, "This feels like the sail of a boat," and another one touches his tail and goes, "This feels like a brush," and they all form their own opinions of the elephant, but it's not what the elephant is because they're not seeing the whole of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is, and a lot of people are really kind of distracted by the sequins or the glitter or the sparkle, and they don't look deeper behind it. So I'm always fighting against that.
Yeah. How would you describe? Because I don't. Do you put your work into series? I know you've got the Rashomon effect and you've numbered those, which is a quite nice way of like giving them a sequence. But you've got these pieces that I just wanted to call like the Crying Eyes series, but I don't know if they've got a particular. Is it Eyes Without a Face? Is that how that series is called?
I call those optics,
Right.
when they were part of a series. So before my art break, I did have everything in kind of a category, but I felt that really limiting. So now my new direction is I'm leaning into a more eclectic, somewhat chaotic portfolio, but really refining the color palette, the techniques, the shapes, the motives. So those are all more repetitive, but the pieces are a little bit all out there. So I'm showing more, but refining that down, because having a limited, I don't know, I found like the series, it didn't quite work. So if it's like, I'll do some things like, so right now, I am kind of working at 6 pieces at the same time. So 3 of them are paintings that I buried in the garden since October, and I just dug them up. And so I have these, it's pinned on my Instagram so I can watch the video, the very dramatic, moody video, but I wanted the fabric to rot. And so now I pick them up, I clean them. And so there's all this like rot and mold. And I'm redoing those. There are a series of 3. And then I have another series of these like muscly vintage beefcake guys that I'm doing cyanotype, also applique work, and then also quilting. So they're going to be a set of 3. So some of them are individual pieces. Some of them will be like a set of 3 that are all the same proportions or whatnot. Or like the military objects, those are all a series as well, but they have their own kind of moods and titles.
Given the pain inherent in your work and your general disdain for your work, do you have any particular techniques that you kind of prefer working with over and above other ones?
I try within what I do that every piece has some sort of embroidery and some sort of bead or paillette work. I also like to use patchwork. I know it's technically not quilting, but that's how people can understand it as quilting, but it's not quilted. And then, even within the embroidery, I only ever do a satin stitch, or I'll do a running stitch possibly, or like a French knot. I just did a piece that I did a lazy daisy, which is really not an actual daisy, but like that little leaf shape, which was really out there for me because I normally don't do that. And then with paillettes, like I don't like using sequins. I only use paillettes. And so I'll do those in a grid formation. So there's little things that I do, and I keep it quite simple. But I find I strongly envy any artist out there or creative who can do one thing and that's all they do and they're hyper focused. If it's a type of style or a type of work and they just do this one thing, that is not how my brain works. It's all over the place at all times. So I have to kind of play with all these ideas.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm wondering whether, to avoid you getting bored of a particular technique, you can do a different subject. And then perhaps if you get bored of, I don't know, you can flip those 2 things around. You've got these 2 variables, haven't you? The pieces that you're making and the techniques you're using. So you're never going to get too tired of doing the same thing because you can flip one of them.
And it also helps my wrists because, as anyone who does handcraft know, or especially embroidery, you can really destroy your wrist. So doing from one thing to another, it helps me kind of, make sure I don't destroy my hands. But also like a kind of a keystone within my artistic practice is that I want to be really experimental with my techniques. The whole reason why I started to add embroidery to my work was I was exploring with mixed media, and I found just using papers and paints and glues and whatnot, I found it so limiting, and I found I didn't get enough texture. So then I started to add embroidery. And so for me, the embroidery, so that extra, I want like a really tactile piece of work. I want to like, now it's more so I want to make work that you have to see in person and really is the antithesis of AI. Like, I want it to be I want AI to never be able to do it. I want that handcraft, that hand feel to it. And so, I will really use anything. And, I've used liquid rubber, spray paint, resin. I burned my work. Gosh, what else have I done? Now I've used mold.
I was going to say, you just buried your work. I don't imagine a large language model is going to work that one out in a hurry.
Yeah, so it's actually, I was inspired by Hussein Shalain, who is this really fantastic designer who did these like really, really politically charged work, and actually did this series of work where it was like a living room setup, and then like the model took the chair and it turned into a dress, and then the table turned into a dress, or works that were electronic. And he did one series where he buried the whole collection in the dirt and then picked it up, and that's what the models were. So a lot of my references do come from fashion and fashion history, but it's more so how do I evoke a feeling?
Yeah.
In like a deeper way.
I was talking with Kirsty MacLeod, who did the red dress embroidery projects, and she was telling me about some of her earlier work. And she had a piece that was made for an opera, and the lady, as she sang the opera, liquid was piped through the dress, which was basically made of a largely soluble material. So over the course of the performance, the dress would dissolve as the woman was singing and wearing it. And there was no real way of knowing how it was going to end up. But yeah, that kind of alchemy sounds like the sort of thing that would resonate with you.
Yeah. It's like so another thing is like I have a few select artists that influenced me that I reference, and they were kind of the first ones that have ever influenced me, but I try to avoid, unless they're peers or friends or whatnot that I'm working with, but really famous artists, I try to avoid, because I don't want to copy or be influenced by other artists, but I am influenced in fashion. So my background is in fashion and in designers. So that's kind of how I think of my work and how I understand it. So, for example, a painter, say, who only paints squares in a fashion context would be, they just make blazers. But a fashion show can be a full array of items. And so that's how I view my work. So there's a language behind it and a point of view, but it's kind of like a collection of work. So for me, the performative aspect of it, or the material manipulation or ideas that I take from a fashion context.
Yeah. And then if you're to exhibit the work as well, you've got to have this musical piece. You've got to have the atmosphere that's created as well. So it isn't just a visual art, is it? It's a sort of immersive experience.
Exactly. Yeah, because when you go to a runway show, it's not only like the choice of models, it's the clothing, it's the music, it's the ambiance, it's all these things. And so it does play a huge part to it. And so within my work, like I said, it's like if you're in fashion and you understand fashion shows and how everything works together, then my work will make a lot more sense, because there is music and there is film and there is video and there is installation and there is all these things, because it gives context of a feeling to the work. I even started this year, since coming back to it, having all my works framed, almost all my works framed, because I also want to control how the work is framed. I don't want someone to decide that. So if the frame is a different color, if the frame is big or small, handmade, if it's textural, I just did a frame that's upholstered, because I want to control that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes a bit of a trick that people miss. Even just in the traditional world of cross stitch, you would find like some people, there's a company called Fabric Flare who do a lot of variegated fabrics that you can use, which enables you to start thinking about fabric as part of it, which I know is a very basic thing in relation to what you're talking about. But I always remember there was a guy called Marshall who is a kind of amateur cross-stitch artist, but because he was pretty competent at joinery, he made his own frames, and his frames would often be bent and shaped in relation to the work that he was producing. So again, it becomes part of the work as opposed to just the thing that kind of encapsulates the work.
And I think, so one thing I do whenever I go, like I go to a lot of galleries. I love galleries. I love museums. I love local shows, bigger shows, smaller. I love to look at it. Is the first thing I always look when there's a painting is if the canvas is stretched or if it's purchased. And I'm adamant that I think it's such a shame anyone buys a pre-made canvas. I think you should stretch your own canvas. I've had studios everywhere in a tiny closet to a big room, and I've always made it work. And it can actually be cheaper than buying a pre-made canvas because, a lot of my frames I got from, Goodwill or Salvation Army. And I think it's such a shame when someone may be a really talented painter and they don't take the right steps at the beginning to get the good fabric or stretch the item or whatnot. It's like if I do embroidery, I'll never show it on the hoop. I'm adamant that it has to be stretched on a stretcher bar. Treat it like fine art and not just a handcraft. And all these elements, I think, are so important.
It's part of the ritual, or it could be part of the ritual, isn't it? And it was making me think of like mise en place, when chefs make sure that all the things are in the right place that they need in order to create their food, because they take that bit of time ahead of schedule to put the knives out and all of those sorts of things. But then it makes the work so much easier because they've deliberately done that. They've got that bit of ownership. So you stretching your own canvas just means that you can, that piece. It's not just, like some tea ceremony or something, isn't it? Almost. It's almost like part of that.
And I think we've lost the point. Like, I think especially with social media, there's this pressure to make a lot of work and make it very fast. And not a lot of people are really focusing on working on skill and technique. And so they get a mass amount of pre-made something and then they're just hammering through. They don't, tint the fabric they don't do all the steps. And I think those are extremely important and it elevates the work. Like, I was at a show and some pieces weren't framed properly. Some still had like the sticker on the side and it wasn't intentional, or it just wasn't treated. It wasn't treated with respect. And I think it's such a shame when artists don't do that, because they could be extremely talented, but they just almost cut the corners. And it is important to do every single element and also respects the craft of it. And that's just my humble opinion and hill that I will die on. And I'm sure people hate it. I do think if you can, you should do those things.
Yeah, if you can, I guess. If you're going to put all the effort into the work to make something beautiful, if you've got the opportunity to finish it properly, then that honors the process.
And I guess I'm more so speaking to people who are career artists and, not a hobbyist. If you're a hobbyist, you're being creative. That's amazing. Artist for everyone. But if you're a career artist who wants to be taken seriously, I do think it does help to kind of do all those steps.
I'm going to confess, and I don't want you to be hating on me, but I had to do an exhibition once. It wasn't my work, but I was putting together an exhibition of stuff that I had, and because of time constraints, I did somewhat sellotape things into the back of frames because it was just needs much. So I had a lot of things to do. It was like 30 pieces of cross stitch, and I had about a day to get them all in frame. So, but you're like, that's good enough for now. If I have the luxury.
Yeah, I get that. Right now I'm trying to juggle and get my portfolio up to snuff, and it's also with dad duties, and so there's some things that I wish I could spend more time, and some corners are cut, and it's not as I'm speaking in the ideal universe, and it doesn't always happen, and sometimes lady luck is on my side and I do a shortcut and it works out, but many times I do a shortcut and then I'm like, oh, I just wasted a whole day, or I wasted a whole bunch of material.
So speaking about that then, and because this is like breaking news that I'm interested in, what lessons can you share about burying your art? Like, did it come out as you expected? Was it better? Was it worse? Would you do it differently?
Yeah, it was a really cathartic experience. I've been thinking a lot about age and death and like metaphorical death and, the ending of relationships, the ending of selves. Like I feel, especially with having a child, I really feel like I've entered adulthood. And like it really feels like I'm an adult now. And so thinking a lot about the end of something and almost, or even like a hibernation. And I really like work that has a controlled aspect to it, but then an organic aspect. And I knew that because I use plastic paillettes, glass beads, acrylic paint, but then on cotton canvas, that each would affect differently. And then one of them had a silk thread. So I knew that the cotton canvas would probably get eaten, but then the polyester would maintain it. And these were all covered in plastic at one point. So I cut the plastic in half. So some of it was exposed and some of it wasn't. And so I was curious to see how it would degrade the fabric. So basically there were 6 individual paintings, but they were in like all diptychs. One was strips of fabric of older paintings that were all sewn together. So all of the types of cotton canvas were a different weight and weave. And then the other 4 were a really, really thin cotton canvas that were then embroidered on top of a thicker cotton canvas. And one of them had shells and larger paillettes and whatnot. And the other one was used silk threads and some polyester threads. So a whole different array of material. So I knew it had to be, I wanted it to be through the wintertime, and I wanted to get it before it got too warm because I knew that would rapidly speed up the decomposition process. So I went out, it must have been this week, I guess, and dug them up. And it was interesting how the soil was still soft. And actually, a fun fact I learned while doing this, my father-in-law helped me out that his first job was a grave digger. So he showed me how to dig a really perfect square hole.
That's a stroke of luck, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was like, my husband's like, yeah, he was a grave digger. I was like, what? How have it been so many years and I've never known this?
Yeah, right. Didn't come up before.
Jack of all trades. So pick them up, wash them, and it was a really interesting experience to like take off all the staples and see the mold and how it was decomposing.
Is it leading you to course correct on your vision at all?
No. I was open. I wasn't sure what to expect. My original idea was to let it decompose, wash it, and then just cast the whole frame in resin to kind of capture it. But now what I did was I made it a little bit more intentional. So I trimmed off the edges. I bought some panel for it, and then I redid the eyes. So it's still part of the eye series, but the eyes of the original works are now trash, and I redid that part, and then I'm going to be coating them in resin, so everything is kind of fossilized within a form. So it was really interesting to see how it affected it.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the weirder projects that I've heard about for a long time. I'm completely up for it. I love it.
In my world, it's really quite normal. Like I'm also, not to scare anyone out there, so this was a project I did when I was a teenager, and I'm redoing some projects that I started when I was younger, but it's going to be on a lantern or some sort of like light object, light fixture, something. I've made my husband, along with myself, start collecting our finger and toenails because those are going to be utilized as well. So
that's beautiful. Watch this space.
Yeah. So Sean's a weird one.
Yes, he is. But we love him, even though he doesn't like us to love him. I think that's the lesson. That's great. I think we can just leave that there.